Hey guys, welcome back to Bear Mountain Builds. I'm Zach, and today we're building an expanding outfeed table for a job site table saw. Now this is the perfect build for you guys with a smaller shop or garage because it has an initial footprint of 30 inches wide and 33 inches deep, which is great for handling some of your smaller cut jobs. But if you want to handle something a little bit bigger, it does expand out to be a full 78 inches wide and 67 inches long. Now just like this, you can handle a full 4x8 sheet of plywood without anything falling off, and when you're done, it easily collapses right back down. And then you can just shove it off into a corner and free up space for something else. Plus, I offer detailed plans that cover bill of materials, cut plan, and color-coded assembly instructions, which makes this whole process super easy to do. So with that, hit the subscribe button and let's go cut out some 2x4s. The plans are designed for a Dewalt job site table saw, but I know not everybody else has that, so the plans also include some really easy formulas to help you just calculate the frame size that will fit your saw. And just like that, we have all of our 2x4 pieces cut out and ready to go. Now these are going to be making up our frame, but before we do that, we're going to go and cut out some 3/4 inch plywood for the base and our saw platform and notch out the corners for the legs. For these two platforms, I'm cutting them out of 3/4 inch sand plywood. These two pieces are making up the base and the saw platform. I'm notching out the 4 corners, that way they can nest into the frame. Before we put this frame together, I'm just drilling a couple pocket holes into the cross pieces. Alright, we got our platforms and our 2x4s ready to go, so it's time to start doing assembly. Now, if this has felt really fast to you, I do offer plans for this entire build that makes this whole process super easy. I'll have them linked down below in the description on my website, so check them out if you're interested. Now, let's start putting our frame together. I'm starting the assembly off with laminating 2 pieces together to make the horizontal braces with a lap joint on either end, and I'm using 2 2x4 offcuts to maintain my spacing. With the braces laminated, I'm attaching the legs using glue and 2.5 inch screws. As always, I'm keeping everything square using my 90-degree corner clamps, and then with the legs attached, I'm mounting the saw platform spacers. With both side frames started, it's time to attach them together with the pocket hole cross pieces. It's important to note the base needs to be put in place before we continue assembling the frame because this is a compact design and it won't be able to slide in later. Before continuing assembling the frame, now's a good time to just do a dry fit of all your pieces with some clamps, just to ensure your saw height is correct, because lumber dimensions are notoriously inconsistent, and you do not want to discover that fact after everything's glued and screwed. Our frame's really coming together. We've got both of our platforms on, but as it stands, it's starting to get a little high for me, so we're gonna take this down to the floor, and while we do that, we're gonna put our casters on there just to get everything up to a more decent height. So, I'm gonna be mounting some 4-inch caster wheels on here. Now, I've said this in past videos, and I wanna say it again. You do not want to cheap out on your caster wheels. You can get cheaper 2-inch wheels, which can work, but when you're working in a shop or a garage, there's gonna be stuff on the floor like small bits of wood or little pebbles that if you're using 2-inch wheels, you're not gonna be able to roll over them. It's gonna just grind your whole table to a halt, and it's gonna get really annoying. So it is worth just the slight extra cost to get the 4-inch caster wheels. These are pretty much the best deal I've found, so I'll have a link down below in the description so you can check them out. They work super well. I highly recommend them. Now, let's get these mounted up. Whenever you're using lag screws, it's always a good idea to finish them off by hand. With the casters mounted, I'm moving on to cutting out a slot for the saw rails. I'm setting the cut depth to 1 5/8 using my custom 3D printed spacers that can be stacked and combined in different increments. I've been using them a lot recently and been finding them honestly really helpful in a number of my builds, so I'm curious what y'all think of them, so leave a comment, but you'll definitely be seeing more of these in the future. All right, now that we got our casters on here, it's time to finish up the frame, but real quick, I just want to talk about the design and how this all works. So, how this works is the front rail on our table saw slides in front of our frame like this, whereas in the back rail, it slides through some slots that we've cut out of our braces. Now, if you get my plans and you have this table saw, it's all easy sailing. All the dimensions are on there. It shows how to build everything. It has cut plans, everything. You don't have to make any adjustments whatsoever. However, I know there are a number of you guys out there who probably don't have this table saw, so I've also included in the plans, if you just get your height, width, and depth of your table saw, you can figure out all the dimensions that you need for your spacers and overall sizing of your table. The one thing I can't calculate for you on the plans is the slot for your rear rails. Now, a really easy way to do this is all you're gonna do is just take your job site saw, set it in place, put in your braces, and then you'll just mark where your channels are, and then you can just take these out, cut it out, and you're good to go. However, if you are in the market for a job site table saw, I highly recommend this Dewalt Table Saw. I've had this for a number of years. I've honestly really loved it. I bought a bigger contractor saw just because I need a little bit more horsepower, but if I have to be honest, I still like this way more and still use it quite often. So if you're looking for one and you're just a hobbyist, this is a great place to start, and realistically, you'll probably never need to upgrade. If you're interested in this, I'll have a link to it down below in the description so you can check it out. Now, let's finish up the rest of our frame. These beveled boards are for mounting the folding brackets, so I cut out a spacer to help position them. It was a little tight getting these pocket screws driven all the way in, so I had to go old school. With that, the frame is fully assembled. However, I did realize I forgot to drill out the pocket holes on my cross members, and that's just what mounts the top surfaces to those. But I'm just going back and drilling them out now. However, it is easier to add these before you install the members. Alrighty, our frame is all put together. We got our wheels on here. Honestly, everything's coming together really well. So next up, we're gonna get our saw in here and mount it in place. That way it's permanent and we can fit all of our platforms around that. And then once that's done, we're gonna go ahead and cut out all of our top surfaces out of 3/4 inch plywood and get them mounted on here. I want to have a nice looking top surface, so I'm cutting these out of 3/4 inch birch veneer plywood, as well as matching the grain between the mounted surfaces and the swing outs. Now, I understand this might be a little extra for a shop build, but I love a good matched grain top. With the tops cut out, I need to add some miter slots to my rear surface, so I'm just putting the board in place and then marking the location for both of these slots. This is another time where you could just cut these out with a router or dado, but again, I'm using my custom spacers and a table saw. With those slots cut out, now I'm just mounting everything in place with 1¼ pocket screws. All right, we've got our platform and saw in place, and now this outfeed table is fully functioning. It's actually kind of amazing, just adding this little bit of outfeed makes this table saw so much more usable. I'm able to cut up to about a 4-foot long strip without it ever falling off this table, which is great. However, I want more length than that. I want to be able to handle a 4x8 sheet of plywood. So what's next is we're going to be adding on our extensions, and these are going to be made possible with our folding 90-degree brackets. They're going to mount to our frame. They'll lock in at the 90 so we can get that extension, but then they also fold down so it saves us some real estate. So we're going to take these over to our assembly table, get them mounted up to our platforms, and mount it onto our frame. Once again, I'm using my spacers to locate the brackets on the swing out surfaces. I'm offsetting the base of the bracket from the edge of the plywood by 1/16 of an inch just to give it a bit of breathing room when it actuates. And finally, I'm mounting them in place using 3/4 inch screws. You would think these would be kind of awkward to mount onto the frame, but they actually go on pretty easy with just a couple clamps. However, one thing to note is to make sure the brackets are parallel so that way they can fully collapse. See what I'm talking about? Much better.
With the swing outs mounted, I applied a little poly and wax to polish it off.
All right, the outfeed table is done, and not only is this useful in a small shop, but it looks good and it is rock solid. Now, I offer plans for this whole build that makes this whole process super easy to put together. So as always, hit the subscribe button so you can stay up to date on all my future videos. If you enjoyed this video, hit the like button for me. It helps me out a ton and I really do appreciate it. And leave a comment, let me know what you think of the build. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.